I may also just scrap all the last 2 hours of work already done. I then take a step back and just get disappointed. I'm done. Welcome everyone, thank you so very much for coming back to my collectible series. Last video, we looked into the first design process for Catastora. Today, we'll be looking into 3D modeling and prepping her for 3D printing a collectible. Let's begin! Our journey begins in Blender, where contrary to popular belief, I'll be using the default cube. As you can also see, I have imported the design sheets I made on the end of the last video. The benefit of doing this myself is that I could export them as transparent PNGs. This reduces the visual clutter of having a white background or any other color, although it's just my personal preference. If you're curious about my settings for the images, just open the Add menu, select Reference Image, and on the image options, look for the Depth option, and check the front side in the middle of the options. Put the opacity around 25 to 50%, depending on the intensity of the image or the contrast that works best for you. Now for the real process. I select my cube and enter Edit mode, where I add a loop cut in the middle of the cube. I delete the left side, and in the Modifiers tab, the blue wrench, I go to Generate, and in the pop-up, I select Mirror. Naturally, it mirrors on the y-axis, but you can change it on the modifier options. Doing this allows me to model Catastora symmetrically, which is pretty neat for doing detailed organic characters or models, though not in every case. With this done, I begin by fitting this cube to Catastora's body. I leave these angled sides at the bottom to extrude the legs later. I then add a loop cut that reaches to the armpits, allowing me space to extrude them. The idea is to get the rough outline of the body with basic shapes and refine them later on. I add the extra loop cuts to get closer to the shape I need. I go to the side view and scale down on the y-axis. You can tell why. I add a loop cut to the side and begin dragging the vertices to smooth out the body. As you can see in this top view, the idea is to turn this cube into an octagon, or in other words, a base circle. The more cuts you add, the smoother a circle you can have. However, we're just beginning. Here, I realized that I add a face in the middle of my model. Technically, it's a side, and when modeling with mirror mode, you need to just have the left or right side open once you apply the mirror modifier. You'll have awkward geometry in the middle, which will get in the way of modeling. Now, I'm dragging the vertices in the middle to get the shape more roughly. I reveal the hidden vertices and keep adjusting until it roughly looks like a turtle shell. Once I'm done with this, I strip from the top faces for the head. I scale to rough out the shapes of the head, focusing on the radius of the head and on the top of the ears, so I can clearly mark where to extrude them from. I continue adding loop cuts and keep roughing it out. As you can see, the side of the head doesn't match at the front, so I press O to invoke the always handy proportional editing tool, saving me some time while shaping out the face better. I grab faces to extrude the snout and adjust it manually on the side and front views. I go to the side, extrude the arms, and use the loop tools to get the arm to form a circle. I extrude to the elbow and the wrist, and use the opportunity to adjust my top view reference. I go to the side and adjust the arm so it matches perfectly. I extrude the paw and keep adjusting the rough shape and my reference. I add 4 loop cuts to get the geometry needed for the paw. I check again and use loop tools to clean the shape of the arm. I go to the head and drag the vertices to round up the head. Since the snout deforms some of the head, I decide to manually pull the vertices. I go to the top to find my plan didn't work, and just give in to using the loop tools again. Since I'm using the mirror modifier, the loop tools work as best they can, which is why I just apply the modifier and redo the loop tools to then cut it in half and reapply the modifier. There's a lot of geometry left to model, and a lot of adjustments. I go back to the paw and arrange the geometry to begin extruding the fingers. First, I smooth out the hand and then bevel every second cut inside the hand, so that once modeling's done, the fingers can move more comfortably. The idea is to model Catastora, give her a rig, and then pose her into what would eventually be her final pose. So I'm taking the character modeling for animation approach, which consists of adding complex geometry so the character moves nicely. Once the mesh is done, I extrude the fingers and apply the circle option from the loop tools. This works perfectly fine for humans, but her cartoonish paws aren't circular, so I'll have to work around that. For now, I'm just placing them where my reference dictates, and again, rough out the shape. After adjusting the shape a little more, I go back to the fingers and add the bend geometry. This geometry allows bendable parts to not clip with each other or deform as they bend. I do this for the elbows as well, and move on to finally extrude the legs. After getting the rough shape, I extrude the feet or hind paws. I keep adjusting the geometry until I feel ready to tackle the toes like I did with the hands. Once the feet are in a respectable level, I go up to the head and finally extrude the ears, and shaping them leads me to make a choice. As you can see, Catastora went from looking promising to looking like a coyote, and I tried shaping the ears in a way that works for me as best as possible, but at this point, I'm done. It's been 2 hours, and I've also received a request. My girlfriend has just asked me to make Catastora articulated. This is an interesting idea. After all, we've been looking at a lot of videos from Slam 3D Print, and I think it would be fun to tackle, but back to the model, I had already taken a lot of time trying to fix Catastora, and I felt like it wasn't working, so I decided to take a new approach to this process. I summoned a sphere and began shaping out the body. My idea is to get spheres and adjust them for every part of Catastora, and then join them all with a boolean, and thus my new journey began. Maybe I could learn something from this, and maybe I may also just scrap all the last 2 hours of work already done. Even though discarding the last model is a harsh thing to do, I felt better seeing how fast adjusting these spheres was. I tried sculpting before, and it never worked out for me, so this is a new feeling for me, like I can finally shape out my imagination without limits on Blender. I get to the first model and face the same awkward coyote ears, and decide that yes, my reference that I boasted about in the last video was still not good enough, but I'm finally capable of fixing it. After that giant boost of confidence, I feel confident to maybe try and fix the previous mesh, and apply what I learned to add the tail and avoid more headaches. Then, I finally begin the clothes. I adjust the skirt so it blends decently with the body, and hide everything to make the ribbon. This would have been challenging had I not decided to use this approach, but let's be honest, this is looking pretty good. All I need is to adjust it so it doesn't clip with the head, moving further away from the reference and preferred aesthetic. I then take a step back to appreciate my work so far and just get disappointed. The detail in the clothes does not match the model I made, and to get to that level means that I'll have to go back to drag vertices until the end of time. So I finally decide to take the clothes and commit to finishing the model with just spheres. After all, if the mesh isn't clean, it won't matter since a 3D printer won't get that detail as long as it looks smooth. And I'm also thinking of articulating Catastora, so maybe the geometry for animation won't really be that necessary, and thus the hustle begins. And with that, Catastora is finally done. I'm glad I took this approach, since I still had to spend another 2 hours and adjust many more tiny details, but this allows me to get her done in time. It's time to join and blend together all the deformed spheres I added. Before joining everything, I need to add the only not symmetrical detail of Catastora. Then, I also realized that if we were to join the cloak and the tail, it wouldn't look so good. The tail is clipping the skirt and cloak, so I need to ground the tail and leave the cloak, so I can maneuver it into dynamic poses. After joining everything together, I go to sculpt mode to blend so Catastora looks better everywhere. Now, the final part is to add the armature. Basically, this is just a skeleton that will move Catastora. Her movement will be very simple, so I just add the base bone, the torso bone, since she'll mainly just rotate, the head bone, and then the bones for the shoulder, arm, hand, and finger. I go to the ears and add 2 bones just so I can bend them into adorable poses. I add bones to the leg, feet, and toes. I make a chain of bones for the tail and begin adding bones to control the cloak and the skirt. Since these are just pure fabric floating around that I'm still planning on printing, it should at least move naturally. But of course, for that, we need as much control as possible, which leads us to these many chains of bones. My idea was to just add a very simple armature and move on with my day. However, I decided to add controls to make the posing easier. After all, that saves a lot of time and doesn't add more work to the weight painting process. These are pretty simple controls. The control bone moves the entire character, allowing the base bone to be the center of gravity that makes all the other limbs react. I add IK targets to the ankle and extrude the IK pole target bone from the knee. The bone at the ankle will drag the feet like you'd do with a puppet, and the floating bone will make the knee bend and also guide where the knee points. I repeat the IK process for the arm, with the IK target on the wrist and the IK pole target floating from the elbow. As you can tell, I only have half of the model. But this isn't a problem since Blender allows us to symmetrize our armature. You just need to name the bones correctly. All the bones at the left have to be named with a .L at the end. If you're repeating the same name for a bone, .L can go before the dot and the number of that bone in the chain. Once all your bones are named correctly, you select the entirety of the armature and with right click, open the armature options window and then select the symmetrize option. Then go back. If you're following my lead, just don't forget to prepare the IK bones with their respective properties and any other special bones you want to use, and also test them so they are working properly. Somehow my arm's IK control is not working properly, so I'll have to check that, but luckily the legs work. I'm taking some time adjusting the skirt, and that should give you some idea as to how much time you need to do these adjustments by hand after doing the symmetrize step. Now we go for the last part, weight painting Catastora. If you've seen my other videos, you'll have a pretty decent idea of this process, but I can give you a refresher. Take the weight paint as a heat cam, just because the colors match better. But the idea is that you pick a bone and you have to paint the mesh, in the range of colors between red and blue, with red being total control over the mesh and blue being no influence at all. Usually, this process takes a while, and many times it is a matter of feeling rather than calculating. One thing I like to do is to use the gradient tool, to have a quick and easy transition between other areas controlled by different bones. I use the gradient with 100% power and then cut around with the gradient at 0% power, and tediously chip away at this for some time, because every once in a while you may need to manually erase paintings where they don't belong, and they may get so complex you may need a new trick. For me, this was to separate the head from the body with seam cuts. This allows me to use the face selection option and just select the head to adjust individually, and separate the rest of the pieces with this method. It's still tedious, but saves enough time for me to accept it. Once the weight painting is done, I give it a very simple trial pose and decide to stop for today. And that will be today's video. Let me know if you like Catastora to be printed with a specific pose, or just have her postable for anyone to enjoy. I'll be reading you in the comments. As always, like, subscribe, and hit the like button to stay up to date with this project, and check some of my webcomic blogs. If you want more content, go read Extreme Superhero for free on Webtoons Canvas. Check my Instagram for my collection of tarot cards, which I'll be finishing soon, and I'll see you later, pals!